Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We have the pleasure of having one of our partners joining us, Brad Vorbeck from Dynamicweb. He will be presenting on e-commerce integration with D365, planning for full e-commerce automation. And as a reminder, we are recording this webinar and we will post it to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And you can find our library under our resources tab on our website. And we do encourage you to ask questions during our presentation, so please feel free to type them into the questions box and we will answer them at the end of our session. So now I'm going to turn it over to Brad to kick off our presentation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Angie. And thank you everybody for joining us today on this topic that we consider extremely important when it comes to e-commerce, and that is integrating with your D365 solution. The reason this topic is so important is because, as you probably know, pretty much every company these days is moving into e-commerce into some capacity to start doing business online so that customers can access their accounts better and just do business with companies easier. But a lot of companies are rushing into the e-commerce space, quick to pick a solution to grow revenue without realizing how intensive their requirements may be. And oftentimes down the road, they find that the integration that they were planning for either isn't possible with their e-commerce solution, or just the feature functionality isn't rich enough to surface those processes online, especially in more B2B focused industries and more complex industries that are more suited for more of an advanced e-commerce solution or an advanced integration. And so, as Angie mentioned, my name is Brad Vorbeck. I'm the marketing manager here at Dynamicweb North America, and we're going to look at the agenda really quickly today, which is why is e-commerce to ERP integration important? We're going to look at some key business processes that you'll probably foundationally want to integrate as part of your core e-commerce strategy. We'll look at planning for more complex B2B requirements. Some of these things are often overlooked in the rush to get an e-commerce solution implemented. And we're going to look at integration tips and pitfalls to avoid. And then finally, how Dynamicweb enables virtually any integration with Dynamics 365 and how you can automate your e-commerce processes, no matter how complex your business might be or your products might be, by fully integrating to Dynamics 365. So I'm sure almost everybody on this call is aware of e-commerce and ERP integration and why that's important, but there might be some people that are just starting their e-commerce research that could use a quick overview. And so we're going to start at the top. And as I mentioned, the unfortunate reality with e-commerce today is that many companies rush to implement a solution with the promise of growing their sales, only to realize that their integration requirements are more complex than they initially thought. And ultimately, they're left with nothing more than tons of manual processes to keep those systems running, and then poor customer experiences as they experience order errors, inability to make returns, customer service issues, and different things like that. So beyond growing sales, which is usually a company's first goal when implementing e-commerce, reducing manual processes and the costs associated with them is one of the top benefits companies should aim for as well. Without sufficient integration to D365, you might be growing sales by introducing a new sales channel for your customers, but your employees are going to be riddled with those manual processes and fixes to keep the systems in sync, and that leads to order errors. And along with that comes inventory management. So when a customer comes to your website to purchase a product, the e-commerce solution needs to know how much inventory is available in the ERP so that it can allow your customer to complete their purchase. And on the flip side, once they check out, Dynamics needs to know how much was ordered and reduce its inventory accordingly. So when these elements aren't in sync, you run the risk of taking orders for items that are out of stock and losing out on sales when your inventory is diminished and you haven't replenished it with a long enough lead time. And then obviously better customer experiences. So when a customer has access to your products, their order history, and can get everything they need on their own, customer satisfaction goes up. And now, thanks to e-commerce leaders like Amazon, sorry, I lost my train of thought. No matter where you're buying or what you're buying, the contrast between companies that can provide those types of integrated, connected e-commerce experiences and those that can't is becoming more obvious. And having your e-commerce integrated with your Dynamics ERP and CRM can enable you to provide personalized experiences such as customer-specific pricing when they're shopping in real time, product recommendations, promotions, and all those other personalizations that we've come to expect. And beyond simply placing orders online, a critical part of your storefront experience for customers, especially in B2B scenarios, is your customer self-service portal capabilities. B2B buyers often have deeper relationships with your business and need to do more complex processes in their portals, such as creating and passing back and forth quotes for a sales order, updating multiple addresses for shipping, updating their account information, which may be more intensive than, say, like a B2C environment, the ability to pay invoices online, and many more unique scenarios that often come up in B2B. And finally, with your data integrated between these critical systems, your business overall gains better data integrity and reliability for accurate forecasting. And then also departments get access to that data for their own operational decision making and process automations. So for example, marketers are very easily able to see what customers have purchased which products and can then generate content accordingly or personalize campaigns accordingly. Or customer service would be able to easily see what a customer has purchased and then provide faster resolutions. So the main lesson to walk away with today is that your e-commerce integration requires both the short-term and the long-term planning, not just the short-term planning. Look far down the road and what you want to scale when you evaluate your solution provider, and then aim to launch with just the most important and impactful components when starting out, with plans to reiterate as you go, because you will scale your strategy. Almost inevitably, there will be more integrations or processes that you want to expose on the front end as you scale, or more personalizations you want to implement. And all of these things are critical to consider when you're evaluating your solution initially, because you're not going to want to have to uproot that solution and re-implement another one down the road. So the first and most important part of your e-commerce implementation should be to have a clear understanding of what to expect from your e-commerce, what you want your customers to be able to perform and to experience, and make sure that you choose a solution that supports these levels of integration and, if needed, customization both to the front end, but also the business processes and the integration points to support those custom business processes. Your intention behind your e-commerce strategy should be clear and crisp, including a more complex self-service features that you might want to include down the road. And at the end of the day, once you've defined your most important experiences or processes for integration, you want to work with an experienced partner to determine exactly which data points need to be integrated, in what way they flow, and how to support those. Automating sales orders is probably the most foundational and beneficial part of the e-commerce process to automate. In fact, it's one of the core reasons for implementing e-commerce to begin with. And as companies scale, they simply do not have enough time to manually re-enter or fix data going into and out of Dynamics 365. If your sales orders aren't tightly integrated and made error-proof based on sound business logic from your Dynamics 365 that translates into your e-commerce, then in some ways you actually get punished as your e-commerce sales grow. The more sales that are coming in, the more work that creates that needs to be done by your team to keep up. And that leads to resistance in enticing customers to shift to the e-commerce store versus doing business the old way. So in a sales order, the process is typically a one-way integration where it's set up in different directions. So new orders flow from e-commerce into Dynamics 365, while historical data flows from D365 to the e-commerce so that customers have that full view of their order history and order status. Another obvious one, and the next core reason to have a tight integration with your ERP, is inventory, which is the lifeblood of your business and the lifeblood of your sales strategy. So this is another piece that critically affects both the customer experience side, but also the business side. So from a customer experience perspective, if the e-commerce can't read inventory in D365, then customers are at risk of checking out and paying for an order for an item that's not even in stock. And in that scenario, they might get notified after the fact that the order needs to be adjusted or canceled. But even then, there's no guaranteeing that the customer is going to see that notification in a timely manner or even at all. And so in a B2B scenario, procurement departments often need to know exactly how much inventory of a product is available so that they can properly plan their supplies and buy exactly when needed. And flipping it to the business side, running out of inventory before it's realized means you're not providing yourself a good enough lead time to replenish that inventory and keep selling by the time it runs out. And to provide good e-commerce experiences on the front end, you want your product information to be in sync with your core product data in Dynamics. For example, information like product ID number, unit measurements, core product names, and other data points or business logic from Dynamics should be pushed to your e-commerce store so that those elements are accurate for the customer on the front end. A good example for this requirement might be if a customer places an order and has a problem or question about their product, they'll have the same product ID number or a product name as your ERP system. And that makes the entire process easier to automate, and it makes it easier for the customer service rep to provide a faster resolution. Also, things like product families or categories can be extended from your e-commerce store or to your e-commerce store from the ERP so that you can offer related products, product bundles, or product recommendations. And related to, but separate from your product details is your product pricing, which can be very straightforward for retail scenarios, but often gets complex with wholesale or B2B scenarios. Obviously, you'll want the pricing your customers see to be the same as what's in your D365 solution, which is your single source of truth for that data. But beyond simple product pricing, what about things like volume or wholesale pricing, where the price drops in tiers as your order quantity goes up? Or customer-specific pricing, where a manufacturer and distributor might have a trade agreement in place that sets a special price just for that specific customer. For these cases, you want to make sure that you can extend that business logic from D365 to your customers and what they experience on the front end, so that when they place orders, they can place them in real time. They can be confident that the order is accurate and can actually go through. And it'll be based on their real price and any potential constraints around that product or any constraints that they have with that user or with your business. And then, of course, there's customer details, which are critical for everything from personalizing experience to shipping orders to the right places even. Customers need the ability to update their account information anytime. That includes their name and contact information, as well as their addresses, their payment info, and more. And they need to be able to rely on that update taking place so that they can continue shopping and place new orders. Without these data points integrated, customers may update their address, which gets updated in Dynamics 365 manually at a later date. And then orders may get shipped, or maybe it never gets updated in D365 at all because that integration isn't there. And then orders may get shipped to their original address that you had in the D365 solution. And the same thing goes for if a customer changes their preferred contact email. You'll want that update to flow to Dynamics so that you can continue communicating to that customer through the best means. And today, nearly every type of business, as I mentioned, is shifting to selling online, not just simple retail scenarios for things like toys or household goods or electronics. Many industries have more complex business models that require some type of logic to be incorporated into the front end or into the sales process. For example, in horticulture, types of inventory could be categorized in D365, which can be calculated against space on shipping rack so that the customer can optimize their order and minimize shipping costs. Or in the case of a rental business, customers need to know exactly what equipment is available and when, and all that depends on unique factors like equipment turnaround time, which accounts for things like maintenance and servicing the equipment between jobs. So your e-commerce needs to be able to adhere to this business logic by relying on how you've built that in D365. And then, of course, there's your email marketing, which is an element of e-commerce that's often overlooked initially when companies are just trying to get something up and running online. How will your system be able to send out typical e-commerce emails like order confirmations or surveys, etc.? Or what about sending emails to abandoned shopping carts to try to win them back? Will your email marketing system be able to target those customers using your e-commerce data, or will you have to manually export those lists out of your e-commerce and upload them to your email service to be able to decide, target customers by things like purchase history and whatnot? And your e-commerce strategy will benefit greatly from your marketing teams being able to segment and target customers precisely. And a lot of that data comes from the e-commerce, not just the ERP or CRM. For example, online behavior, what web pages they've purchased or they've visited, what web pages they've bounced from, etc. And just a side note, email marketing is actually one of the most important factors in e-commerce success, and it's still cited by more than 56% of marketers as the #1 marketing channel for customer retention. So it's certainly not something to be overlooked. You want to consider how all this plays out with your e-commerce solution once it's implemented. Supporting D365, so let me back up a little bit. As I mentioned, there are foundational processes that you want to integrate with your e-commerce strategy. We essentially covered most of those just now, but there are also more complex B2B processes to consider, besides just things like business logic or customer-specific pricing. For example, one of the more complex things to implement is a integrated quote to cart to order process, and that can be complex due to a number of technical factors involving things like how the quote document gets updated and passed between parties, and then ultimately how those quotes are converted to an actual order online that the customer can see and edit in their portal, and then ultimately pay for and place the order. So if your company wants to integrate these types of scenarios, it's certainly possible, but you'll want to work with an experienced provider that specializes in these types of complex e-commerce processes. Other things like flexible payment methods, and particularly things like ACH payments. Oftentimes in the B2B space, transactions exceed what a credit card limit might allow, and so payments are used in more sophisticated methods, including invoice as well. So many customers pay by invoice, so they place the order and then are generated an invoice, but they don't necessarily have to pay immediately. They can pay it by the end of the terms. We support that as well, and that's another complex component to e-commerce that many solutions out there today don't provide, simply because they're not geared toward B2B processes. And same with things like warranty claims, RMAs, so those are return merchandise authorizations. Those can be initiated and automated from the front end and executed in the ERP in the customer portal. And so these are all processes you'll want to think about if you're in a B2B space. Are you going to be needing these? You'll want to consider a more advanced solution to support those. And then there's other fringe cases and custom processes as well. For example, in the horticulture industry, people need to order their plants for months in advance so that they can be planted and prepared for them. We have provided advanced ordering capabilities for specific shipping dates, with the ability to add and edit and delete items right up until the plants are placed in the ground. And additionally, we have stock per week as its own, or people can view stock per week and order by shipping date availability as well. And then in the wine distribution space, we support things like allotments, where the certain customers are given a certain number of days to decide if they want to accept or decline a wine allotment or an offer as part of a subscription or a special club that they might be a part of. And if they decline that offer or that allotment, it's then shifted to the next customer based on a fancy algorithm. And this is a very particular instance where they're selling tailored offers to high-end buyers that are placing extremely expensive orders. And that's why it's sort of like an invite-only type of offer. And we can even support that type of logic as well, where it goes to the next customer based on their customer profile. And for things like equipment rentals, we need to be able to tell which equipment is available at which warehouse at any given time. And this becomes challenging because you need to consider shipping times, a time to clean and service the equipment. And our rental engine takes care of the complexity so that the end user has a clean and simple user interface when they're ordering equipment. And all that complexity is handled and taken care of in the background. And so their experience is actually very clean and simple when it would typically be a lot of scheduling and back and forth with a sales rep in a typical scenario. So just some tips before you begin your e-commerce implementation or while you're planning your e-commerce integration requirements. Consider your future needs while evaluating solutions, as I mentioned before. Most e-commerce businesses tend to focus just on achieving short-term goals, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing wrong with that if you have a simple business model or are selling fairly simple products. But the short-sightedness of not considering the future needs spanning a longer amount of time can prove dangerous for the business. Having a long-term view is significantly important for a successful integration. So challenges to avoid as you begin planning for your e-commerce implementation. Big bang rollouts are something that are not considered the best practice, and that is because your long-term requirements are often more complex than your short-term requirements. When you're implementing your solution, trim down the initial requirements into what's most critical, what you want to start doing for the next year, and then consider what more complex process you can implement as you go. Another complex situation to avoid is multi-master situations, which are difficult and error-prone to manage. And what I mean by that are situations where a change can be made either on the website or in Dynamics 365. And an example of that is a quote which can be created and edited on the web, but approved and adjusted by a sales rep in the ERP. We have to ensure that those two changes that are made at the same time don't conflict with each other and are handled gracefully. And so that's why quotes can be a complex process to integrate, but we've done that many times, and it's something that we specialize in. But that would be an example of a multi-master scenario, and you can see why that creates a little more complexity. So I will wrap up shortly here, just in a couple minutes, but just a little bit about Dynamicweb. We are a modular platform for B2B and B2C. So of course we do support standard e-commerce scenarios such as a shopping cart scenario, your classic Amazon experience, but also B2B industries as well. So there's I don't know if there's a situation we haven't come across or a vertical that we haven't come across to create some sort of custom process or custom business logic to support their unique requirements. And oftentimes that's done through ordering portals as well. So whether that's in a B2B storefront or through something like a closed store or a ordering portal, we can support that as well. Our e-commerce solution, unlike most solutions, comes with a product information management system. And that is a step up from just the simple product storage capabilities that are in a standard e-commerce solution, because this allows you to actually push your product data to all of your channels. So it gives you one place to manage all of your product information, to enrich it with any description or specification that you need your customers to know, and then enables you to push that product data to things like your catalogs, your catalog design files and automatically publish catalogs, or your third-party marketplaces that you might be selling on, such as Amazon or eBay, or even just sales sheets, partner portals, supplier portals. Anywhere you need your accurate product information to be published to, you can do it in one place in Dynamicweb and manage it all there. We also have a 100% customizable content management system, and that is one of the reasons we're able to support such complex processes and e-commerce processes on the front end is because we have full control over the content management system, what the customer experience is, whether that's in the portal or on the website. And so there's really nothing that you can't make possible if you want that to be part of your e-commerce experience. And then we also include an email marketing module that allows you to automate those emails, like I said, like order emails or abandoned shopping cart emails, but also enables you to really personalize your campaigns and even automate your campaigns based on behavioral triggers. So because that email marketing engine is built into Dynamicweb, you can automatically send out email content campaigns for customers who have bought a certain product, or hyper-focused customers who maybe visited a web page but didn't check out, and send them a promotion for that type of product, things like that. So having that email marketing built into the platform is extremely useful. There's a lot less integration to worry about compared to with solutions like MailChimp. We integrate fully to virtually any data point in Dynamics 365. We are a flexible and open API. That is our integration method. So we have a native integration framework built just for Dynamics 365. And we also integrate to virtually any ERP. We're ERP agnostic. However, we do have pre-built integrations for every product, every version of Nav, AX, Business Central, and Finance and Operations. And because we integrate with API, which is the most modern and best practice approach for integration these days, compared to something like maybe an embedded solution or an embedded integration where the e-commerce is actually installed in the ERP and customizations are made to the ERP tables to make it function. That's a little bit of a more outdated method of integration and leads to some challenges. For example, because we're integrated through API, our instance that you're working from is a separate instance from the ERP, and thus updates and migrations for those solutions are easy and they're independent of each other. If you have to upgrade or migrate, say, from Nav to Business Central, or upgrade from an older version of Nav to a newer version of Nav, that doesn't have to affect your e-commerce or your website, and vice versa. If you need to make any updates or significant changes to your Dynamicweb solution, your ERP isn't impacted, and also your ERP performance is never impacted as well. And as I mentioned, we integrate with virtually any data point, so all these processes below are possible, and then even custom business processes that you want to extend to the front end. From an architectural perspective, we sit between your Dynamics 365 solution and all the channels that you want to push your products out to. So we pull all the core data that we can. We always use your master product data from Dynamics 365 into our system. Anything that's needed for the e-commerce experience, we then can supplement with the PIM, with the e-commerce and the CMS. And then we can push those products and those experiences out to your own e-commerce store in Dynamicweb, third-party marketplaces like I mentioned, your email marketing, portals, mobile applications, product catalogs, etc. So we actually enable omni-channel selling and omni-channel operations very easily by giving you a single solution to manage everything from, and then just simply push it out to the channels that you want to expose it to. Some of the brands that trust Dynamicweb are shown here. You can see there's a wide range of B2B and B2C companies, and all of these have a wide range of scenarios that we've applied e-commerce to. So some of them are classic retail storefronts, some of them are closed B2B storefronts, some of them are simply B2B portals, and some of them are even non-transactional portals for internal staff to be able to leverage their own assets to rent out for things like events or trade shows and whatnot. So there's really a lot you can do. The sky is the limit with what you want to extend to your customers in the front end, whether it's transactional or simply operational, and we can support that. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Angie. That wraps up my bit, but if you have any questions, I think we'd like to open the floor at this time. Angie, back to you.
All right, thank you, Brad. No questions have come through at this time. If anybody does have any, please feel free to get them into the questions box. Okay, well, thank you, Brad, for the presentation.
Thank you.
All right, and also we do have more of our upcoming events on our website at inovia.com/events, so you can check out those and register. We do have our training workshop page up too, and you can check out all the particular workshops that are right for your role at inovia.com/workshops. And if you haven't heard the latest Inovia Conversation podcast, we have a library of podcast episodes for you to listen to, and you can learn more on our podcast page, and that's inovia.com/podcast. So browse the selection and subscribe so you'll be notified when those new episodes air. And we do have exciting news about our conferences in 2023. You can visit our conference page at inovia.com/conferences to learn more. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon at another Inovia webinar.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care, everyone, and have a nice Thanksgiving.